So the fourth topic, and our last topic today, is about the psychology of waiting. So waiting can feel like suffering, as this comic from Calvin and Hobbes shows. And perhaps some of you are in fact feeling like this, just hoping that this class will end as soon as possible. I don't know, just speaking from personal experience observing students. So let's look at some of the factors that affect how customers perceive waiting and learn how we can make waiting more pleasant. The first factor is that when your wait time is occupied with anything else to do, it feels shorter than unoccupied waiting time. And that's why in-flight entertainment is so popular back when people still used to fly in airplanes before the pandemic. The second factor is that an in-process wait feels shorter than a pre-process wait. So what that means is if you're still waiting to get started, such as boarding the plane or waiting for the actual flight to start, that kind of feels kind of long. But once you actually start the service, you feel a bit more relaxed because you know everything is going on, things are happening. Similar principles apply when you're waiting to get seated at a restaurant, for example, or waiting to order. Next, uncertain waits feel longer than known finite waits. So if you know how long you need to wait, that's not as bad as if you don't know how long you have to wait. And if there's an explanation for why you're waiting, that feels better than if you don't know why you're waiting. So explained waits feel shorter than unexplained waits. So for example, if you were waiting for a flight and your flight was cancelled or delayed, or let's say delayed, you might feel quite bad, but if you at least know why it was delayed, then you may not feel as bad. The next factor is that if a service is more valuable, customers are willing to wait longer. So for example, there's a famous band called DNA, which, like, this is a K-pop group. I think a lot of you know about this band and their famous song, BTS, their famous song. Okay, I'm just kidding with you. I know this band is actually called BTS, and lots of people are fans of their singing and dancing. Alright, so I know that many students would be willing to wait hours if they could buy tickets to attend their concerts. But if you think about waiting for a meeting with your lecturer or teacher, I bet most of you will not be willing to wait more than 5 minutes to, for example, ask me a question or discuss something you learn in the course with me. The next factor is how unfair waits feel longer than equitable waits. And I'm going to use some images from this movie called Knocked Up to illustrate my point. So here you see a long line of people waiting to get into a club, and the bouncer lets these two young ladies in because they are basically pretty. And some of the other customers might feel very angry and upset because it's not fair. Why do they not have to wait, but everyone else has to wait hours to get into the club? So if you see other people cutting the line or getting special privileges, and you don't, then that feels longer and more painful. The next factor is that a solo wait feels longer than a group wait. This is a picture from another movie, but basically illustrates people waiting to see the doctor at the hospital. So because everyone's waiting together, it doesn't feel as bad. Versus if you're waiting in a room all by yourself, then you kind of are not, there's no sense of camaraderie that we're waiting together. Next, if you break a long wait by interrupting it with a little bit of interaction, it makes the shorter wait, makes a wait feel shorter. And also if you get some free stuff, if you end up waiting a long time, that also makes you happier, of course. So for example, if you're waiting at a restaurant, you order something, but it takes a long time for that meal to arrive, but the waiter keeps on checking in on you and giving you an update, or even giving you a free drink, that makes the wait much more tolerable. Let's look at the case study of Hong Kong Disneyland. Disneyland is a place where you have to wait a lot. Things are a little bit better with the COVID pandemic recently. I went to the Hong Kong Disneyland and there were a lot fewer people and the waiting time was much shorter, I felt. Anyway, so let's get to it. How does Disneyland try to manage the waiting experience that guests have so that they don't feel frustrated when they're waiting? So the first thing they do is the waiting line is actually split across multiple smaller waiting areas. And they also put a lot of interesting things in the various waiting areas so that you can take a look. So for example, these are some photos I took about the waiting area of an attraction called Mystic Manor. So you can see different interesting things in the small waiting rooms along the way. Another trick that they can use is they can dynamically schedule some meet and greet characters. So if there's a particularly long waiting line for an attraction, you can bring these people in nearby to distract people and get some people to perhaps leave the line to instead take photos with these adorable characters from Up, one of my favorite movies of all time. Disneyland also tries to keep customers informed about the estimated waiting time. So if you join the line now, you might be expected to wait 85 minutes. But if you take a fast pass, you can return during a certain time period with a much shorter waiting line. And let's talk about fast pass right now. So if you get a fast pass ticket, it looks something like this. So this is when you got the fast pass ticket, and this is when you should come back for this particular ride. If you come back during this time, usually the wait time is about 5 or at most 10 minutes. And here's another bit of information that this person pulled a fast pass at 8:30, but can get the next fast pass 2 hours later at 10:30. And this is some information, the same information that I mentioned in the previous slide. You can read it if you missed it. All right, so how does FastPass work? So first, Disneyland calculates the service capacity of each ride. So let's just make up some nice round numbers for this example. Suppose Hyperspace Mountain can serve 600 guests per operating hour. Then you need to set aside a certain amount of capacity for the FastPass guests. So let's say 40% of this capacity will be for fast passes. And how they do it is they issue fast passes with 1 hour slots and 5-minute increments. So 28 tickets, there are 240 tickets for that hour, so they'll do 20 for 9 to 10, 20 for 9:05 to 10:05, and so on. So one interesting thing is that fast passes does not change the number of guests using the ride. So how does it actually help? So let's think about it before I give you the answer. So here are some questions for us to think about and discuss. So first, FastPass is called a virtual waiting system. So why is it called a virtual waiting system? Why is FastPass beneficial for customers? And why is FastPass beneficial for Disneyland as well? So why don't you spend a bit of time to think about this and let's discuss. Alright, so what are the key takeaways from this topic? So we talked about the psychology of waiting. So we discussed some factors that affect how customers perceive their waiting time. And we also explained some tricks that you can use to make the waiting feel more pleasant or the waiting time feel shorter. The Disneyland case study shows how Disneyland uses various tricks to make the waiting experience more pleasant for customers, especially the idea of FastPass in the virtual waiting system has been quite effective. Alright, that's the end. Bye.